psychiatrist.
Social worker therapist. So she knows a lot about vicarious trauma and is here to help us with what we may impact this summer. So.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here, for having me. I try to make this as interactive and harmless as possible, but we'll see. So I like to start out, this is the first time I'm doing this in person. The last 2 times were remote. So that was fun to kind of play with the chat room, but I would love, I know it's a bigger group, if we could all go around and just say first name, where your placement is, and just one word that describes you.
My name is Ashley V. Ortega. I'm at BPI, and one word that describes me is awkward.
My name is Elisa. I'm at the ACLU of Illinois, and I was also going to say awkward, but maybe I'll just describe my current mood: tired.
I'm James. I'm at Lawyers for the Creative Arts, and I'll do my current mood, which is excited.
I'm Betsy. I'm at the Center for Disability and Elder Law, and I'm gonna go with thoughtful.
Sure. Hi, my name is Mia. I'm at Illinois Legal Aid Online, and one word that describes me is.
Hey everybody, my name is Andrew. I'm placed with Cook County Office of the Guardian, the Adult Division, and one word that describes me right now is bar prep.
It's 2 words. That's the big thing. It's fine.
I'm Sean. I'm at Carpals this summer and will also go with bar prep.
Hi everyone, my name is Brandon. I'm at the Greater Chicago Legal Clinic, and my word will be also tired.
Everyone, my name is James. I'm also at BPI. And I can't decide, so I'm going with indecisive.
My name is Adam. I'm at the Youth Council for Health Justice, and I am loud.
Joel. I'm at Loyola Tax Clinic. Intrusive.
That's the serve emails ever.
I'm Chris. I'm at the Bloom Legal Clinic, and optimistic.
I'm Abby. I'm at the Schreiber Center on Poverty Law, and I'll go with introspective.
I'm Dakota. I'm at Prairie State Legal Services, and I will go with excited.
I'm Mallory. I'm with the ACLU as well, and I am happy.
I'm Ava. I'm at Land of Lincoln Carbondale. Transgender.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm also at Illinois Legal Aid Online, and loud would be a good word to describe me.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm at Land of Lincoln Legal Aid in Alton, Illinois, and best quality, enthusiastic.
I'm Lydia. I'm also at Land of Lincoln Legal Aid in the East St. Louis office, and I'm also going to say enthusiastic.
I'm Sophia. I'm at the MacArthur Justice Center, and I would say curious.
I'm Hayden. I'm at HHS, and I would indecisive.
I'm Annie. I'm at Legal Aid Chicago, and I'm fine.
I'm Vanessa. I'm at Equip for Equality, and I am vivacious.
I'm Sarah. I'm at Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and I am passionate.
I'm Anna. I'm at the Legal Aid Society, and I'm hopeful.
I'm Jim. I'm also at Legal Aid Chicago, and I'm active.
I'm Marusa. I'm at Cabrini Green Legal Aid, and I'm patient.
I'm Corinne. I'm at Legal Aid Chicago, and I'm adventurous.
I'm Ty. I'm at Lawyers Committee for Better Housing, and I live in Nerdy.
I'm Brittany Malone, and I'll be at Legal Counsel for Health Justice, and I'm fine.
I'm Fiona Ag. I'm at Land of Lincoln in Champaign, Urbana, and it's the first day of Pride Month, so here.
I'm Mercedes. I'm at Chicago Volunteer Legal Services, and I'm anxious.
I'm Stephanie. I'm also at Legal Aid Chicago, and I'm excited.
I'm Ashton. I'm also at Legal Aid Chicago,
And I am damp. Been a very sweaty morning.
I'm Sophia, I'm with Lambda Legal, and I am friendly.
I'm Max, I'm with Chicago Appleseed, and I am curious.
I'm Lena, I'm with the Institute for Justice Clinic on Entrepreneurship, and I'm sarcastic.
I'm Katie, I'm with National Immigrant Justice Center, and I will recycle the
I'm Sophia, I'm working at Cooley this summer, and I'm also gonna go with excited.
I'm Doug, I'm with the Environmental Law and Policy Center, and I am.
I'm Akshay, I'm with the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and that's social.
Oh, hi, I'm Jessica, I'm Philly staff, managing attorney, and I am multitasking. With you, and just to give you some of their words, compassionate, quiet, participatory, and I'm sharing some of your words as well. So we're all interacting.
Thank you. My name's Grayson or Gray. I am also a Philly staffer, and mine is multitasking as well. Doing a lot of stuff right now.
That's us today.
Yeah.
My name is Ryan. I'm a Greater Chicago Legal Clinic, and I would say optimistic.
I'm Alexis Hernandez. I'm with the Mexican American Legal Defense, but it's at Maldef, and I will say brave.
My name is Sapita. I intern with Illinois Legal Aid Online, and I would say anxiously excited.
I'm Mike, I'm with Legal Aid Chicago, and today I am caffeinated.
I'm Declan, I'm with the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and right now I'm kind of nervous.
Hi, my name is Sebastian, I'm with Chicago House, and my word would be courage.
I'm Nick, I'm with Chicago Volunteer Legal Services, and I'll go with Paul. I'm Zach, I'm a flatter up, and I'm happy.
I'm Katie, I'm with Edge Clinic on Entrepreneurship, and I'm
All right, well, thank you so much for doing that. It's interesting when you think of one word that describes you. I heard a lot of moods, I heard some personality traits, I heard some words that identify you or adjectives. And so in kind of correlating that to this presentation, if we're trying to work on overcoming vicarious trauma, so we know that it's going to be there, whether we like it or not, kind of keeping in mind that maybe our moods in the moment doesn't necessarily have to be our entire identity, and also just kind of keeping in mind that it's fluid, right? So we might be tired, exhausted, or damp today, but we can dry up, we can become excited, and we can kind of turn things around as well. So like Brent said, my name is Virginia Ryan. I was a public interest attorney for about 8 years. I started my own mental health practice and law firm a couple years ago. And we can talk about why I've done that. That's kind of how I've worked to overcome my own vicarious trauma in some sense. And so I hope to kind of let me get to the next slide. The objectives for today are going to be to kind of give you guys a better understanding of what trauma and vicarious trauma is, which I'm sure at this point in life and in your education and careers, you've probably already gotten some feedback and knowledge of what those terms are, but also kind of being more mindful of what the physical and neurological impacts of vicarious trauma and trauma are. And then I'm going to just throw all of my interventions and techniques on you guys to be able to help you get these tools in your toolbox so that down the line, tomorrow, during bar prep, years from now, hopefully you can come back to these and it can help you just do these last two things. So lead a more peaceful, productive, satisfying life. We only get one. And providing kind of the most effective and efficient services to clients. And so I just want to make sure, does it seem like the people that are virtual can hear me okay? Okay, awesome. Any questions about the objectives? Feel free to let me know if you do. Okay, so this is one of my tools. Feel free to write these down so that you can do them later too. So this is a grounding exercise and it can help you sometimes manage any feelings of anxiety. So we're going to practice it. So I heard a couple of people say things that I identified them today is bar prep. Right, that was kind of right here in this. Okay, so let's kind of walk through what this activity looks like together. So we're looking at each other. So what would you say is the problem in your mind when it comes to bar prep? And I know this presentation is only so long, so.
There's too much information.
Too much information, perfect. Okay, so what are the negative kind of impacts of your feelings when you think of too much information?
I won't be able to get them all done.
Okay. So not being able to get it done in time. Anybody else have anything to add to that? When it comes to bar prep, too much information? Overwhelmed. Absolutely. Okay. What about, does anybody think about what happens if I don't get all that information? What are the feelings there?
Yeah, I can feel like any tiny piece of information, that could be the key, and it'll show up on the thing. And if I don't know that specific tiny thing, I'll fail, that'll make the difference, but it's every time there's a new tiny thing that could make the difference, so.
Absolutely, which I think gets to the overwhelming that we heard. Okay, so how do we reframe and look forward to this problem that can give us some sense of hope? Any ideas?
You don't have to get them all right to pass the bar.
That's correct. You don't need a perfect score. Here you. I saw a hand back here now.
Michelle Obama failed.
Well, that's right. Other people have not passed and they're thriving. Anything else? Anything else that we can do to help kind of look forward, minimize the negative impacts we're having with the problem?
Maybe talk to other people who have passed the bar and see, they had the same fears and they passed and they're fine.
Absolutely. We also want to make sure too that we're not bundling too much, right? So like there's the bar exam and then there's, okay, what happens if we pass the bar exam and what happens if we don't pass the bar exam? So right now trying to like minimize and helping with feeling overwhelmed, let's just start with bar exams. That's all we need to get to. So we're going to do our bar prep course, we're going to study, we're going to do what we should be doing right now in this moment, and maybe not having too much forward thinking that could add on anxiety. Does that make sense? So that's something that you can do with any type of problem that you have. It might be later when you're at your internships or when you're working, you have a client coming to you with a whole bucket of problems. And so it's like, well, let's just take them one at a time, try to help and work with them on reframing, and then kind of realizing this is where it kind of ends with this issue, and then this is where we can start with the next one. What's trauma? What do we think? There's no wrong answers, I promise. Sebastian? That's my son's name, so I remembered it.
I would say trauma is kind of like a lingering feeling that something that happened in the past, you'll still feel like in the future, like for example, 20 years in the future, like you're still in that same moment.
Sure, absolutely. Anybody adding anything online? I just want to make sure that I.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, feel free on Cloud World to join in. Anybody have anything to add to that?
Sort of the emotional synaptic response you've had past events in your life.
Yeah. So can you describe one?
I'll give an example of when I came out. Like, I came out to my parents when I was 16, and like it was an ugly conversation. And I grew up at a farm, so like I went outside to the cow barn, and now whenever I'm in that damn barn, all I think about are the emotions that I had at that moment. So like, no matter what cow I see, I think of the ugly day coming out and all the trauma, all the emotions I experienced from it.
Absolutely. That's a great example. And I will say that's something that, thank you for personally sharing, I'll personal share right back. So in kind of the last 2 years when I was doing more litigating and everything was remote and it was Zoom court, I was doing these like high conflict custody cases in my bedroom. And then I have 2 very small kids, they were outside. And so to be in that space where I'm like arguing so zealously how one parent shouldn't have access to the other parent, even though I'm only hearing one side of it, And then I can hear my own little kids and like it just, being in my bedroom was not the same anymore for me. And so that certainly is a great example of how you might be able to move past that trauma. I'm sure you do a lot of work emotionally, you can rebuild, but it can just like you get back in that space and then there it comes again. I know you had raised your hand too.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say like an experience or emotion that's too large to process.
Yeah. Does everyone hear that?
No.
Kind of experiencing an emotion that's just too big for that moment. Is that what you said? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm just gonna, and thank you so much for sharing. So this is kind of a very abbreviated, I'm gonna move my bag so I can see myself tripping over it. 2 seconds. So this is just another kind of just definition of a situation in which stress caused by the event or series of events overwhelms one's ability to use the tools they normally have at their disposal. So someone who might be experiencing trauma or who's experienced it in their past might not be able to do the grounding exercise that we just went through because they just don't have the mental bandwidth to be able to be in that space. And so in this kind of public interest realm where you're primarily working with clients who have been through trauma, you're going to be experiencing that a lot on a day-to-day basis while also already going through or having gone through your own traumas. So it gets tricky. How do we distinguish a traumatic experience from a stressful one? What do we think? We can go back to bar prep, right? At this point, we haven't taken the bar yet, right? Has anyone actually taken it yet? No, okay. Would we classify that as a stressful experience, a traumatic one? What would be the difference? Yes.
The stressful one, it goes away. Like once you take the exam, that stress will subside, but the trauma lingers and it'll stay there years from now.
Absolutely. That's a great example. Anything else? Yeah.
Trauma is a response that stays with people for more than just a moment due to feeling insecure or unsafe. And so bar prep, unless somebody is being violent towards you during it, it's not typically traumatic.
Right. That's an excellent point. And that, you know, and because a lot of my public interest experience is in family law. And so you have someone who's perhaps gone through a trauma that's changed their family system, and now they're in the court process, which is its own separate realm of trauma. And so no one is ever, regardless of who you are, no one's ever going to really be able to heal from trauma until you're safe. And so when you have clients that you're working with and you may be helping them through their legal needs, they're still not safe. And sometimes these cases can take years, and then you're kind of re-experiencing, or this person's re-experiencing their trauma for an extended period of time. And the takeaway there for you is to be able to identify that and acknowledge that, and to be able to know within your limits, like it may have a different set of circumstances before I even arrived in this person's life has kind of led them to this situation. I can be with them in this moment, but I can't take all of their trauma back with me because it will kind of just weigh on you. And then how can we continue to help others? Does that make sense? Okay. So here are just some additional, I think this was already said, but different ways to distinguish between trauma and stress. So trauma, it fragments, it disorganizes your thoughts, your feelings, your bodily experiences. So this is important to know because when you are having a meeting with a client and you're trying to get a timeline so that you can then transfer it to your petition or your pleading, that person just may not be able to organize the thoughts in the way that you need them to prepare a proper affidavit. And so knowing that ahead of time in ways that we can be proactive as legal aid attorneys is just to designate, okay, I know that I'm gonna need probably this amount of time to work with this client. I probably don't have that amount of time because I have X, Y, Z other clients to work with, but then I can at least go in with more realistic goals of we're probably going to only get through this much of what we need to get through because this client just cannot organize their thoughts. And being able to differentiate, this has nothing to do with me, this has nothing to do with my lawyering abilities, this is just an obstacle that I've been kind of confronted with and that I need to kind of approach in a different manner. Because I have seen, unfortunately, sometimes where certain either attorneys or mental health professionals, anybody might try to be kind of pushing the client to be able to get the things that they need to get done for their legal, to be able to help them legally, but it doesn't work. And then both people kind of walk out feeling a little bit frustrated. This client feels re-traumatized and this attorney feels like, what was even the point of that meeting? We didn't even get anything done. So making sure that we're being mindful of that and being able to kind of set proper expectations when we're working with clients. It'll help you feel a little bit less of kind of what oftentimes can happen is some imposter syndrome as attorneys. And so knowing that, okay, my goal was to just get this amount of information done. I got it, perfect. I'm gonna have to just get the rest at a different time and I'm gonna figure out how to make that work. Another way to kind of distinguish trauma and stress is trauma can make it extremely difficult to learn from and make meaning out of experiences. So sometimes what that might look like in the legal aid world is you might go in front of a judge, get a ruling that's phenomenal for your client, but they don't see it that way because that it's either it's not phenomenal to them or it didn't erase the trauma that they had experienced to get to where we are today. And so making sure that you are able to, again, identify and distinguish that so then you don't internalize maybe, hey, like I'm so excited to be able to tell you we got this win and they're not sharing your excitement, that you can still kind of, okay, that's fine, like we'll be in this space with you, but then I'm gonna go find someone and be able to kind of share the excitement with them. Okay. Here is another kind of therapy tool. So being able to stop negative thoughts. Sometimes we can ruminate, right? Especially bar prep, finals, law school, life, COVID, Chicago weather, whatever, like it doesn't stop. So bills, relationships, yeah. So one way to help kind of with ruminating thoughts and anxiety is counting. And so for anger, it can be helpful to count from 1 to 10, right? Like we're feeling really heated. And so sometimes if we just count to 10 and we make sure that we're being mindful of our breathing, it can kind of help us calm down and think a little bit more rationally. For anxiety, counting from 1 to 10, the studies say it doesn't really do anything. Scattered counting is what can be more effective for anxiety because it's making you think a little bit more. So I just threw some random numbers out there. So just kind of a takeaway for you, right? Maybe when you're bar studying and you're like, what is this commercial paper like problem? I have no idea. There's no way I'm gonna remember it. And so then just start counting, like throwing out different numbers. And if you can kind of make a habit of it, you will start to be able to get your brain to kind of refocus and centralize on what you're focusing on in that moment. That's what I said there. Higher level concentration for scattered counting can help take the mind off negative thoughts too. So that's what we always want to do. Questions about that? All right. Let's see. Okay, so I know you all went around and you talked about where you're going to be. So let me see. Let's try this. So let's all go around again. Just one word that you think will describe an issue that you imagine that your clients are going to be coming to you with. We'll start on this side.
Can it be more than one? Like pro se representation?
Sure, pro se representation.
Family.
Family.
So family, like custody, record expungement.
Mm-hmm.
Police.
Stability. IRS. Fraud.
Child removal. Domestic violence. Discrimination.
Home.
Pro se representation.
Food insecurity.
Before we go back, let's hit this camera. Please.
Police.
Copyright.
Guardianship.
Orders of protection. Housing.
Compliance.
Family.
Disability. Deportation.
Discrimination.
background checks.
Work culture, convictions,
Special education advocacy.
family. Legal status,
Bankruptcy.
discrimination,
Courts.
Livelihood.
Asylum. Expungement.
Contamination.
Contracts.
custody,
Fairness.
injury,
Employment.
Tax.
Accessing gender affirming care.
Housing. Taxes.
So some pretty heavy things and, okay,
Can I read that?
please.
Abuse, domestic violence, human trafficking, accessibility, disenfranchisement, red tape, which they were like, that's 2 words, but sexual violence, immigration status, accessibility, bankruptcy, guardianship, illness, clemency, government transparency, and benefit eligibility.
So not too much of like, I'm coming to you because I'm just overwhelmed with happiness. I don't know what to do, or I just won the lottery, don't know what to do. A lot of heavy stuff, and most likely it's gonna be multiple of the issues, right? Like I kind of just had everyone go around and say one, but you can just raise your hand. Who thinks the likelihood that someone's coming to you with just one issue is realistic of what you think you're gonna say? Okay. What one issue do you think?
Specific tax problem
Fair.
that, like they say, I don't know, like you don't have income for this year, or, well, yeah, no, there's a few things, but that's a possibility. It could just be one issue.
One tax.
A lot of people with a lot of issues, yeah, but someone
Yeah.
could have one issue.
That would be the dream, right? Then you just help them kind of clear up that one tax issue and they go on their merry way. But sometimes that doesn't always happen. So how can we just be mindful again that they're coming to us with all these issues, but they're not gonna walk out with all those issues eliminated? That's just not gonna happen. And that's okay. Okay. Physical symptoms of trauma. So I put some on here, general soreness of your entire body. This can sometimes come out, maybe you're having a client meeting and you see someone is having a hard time sitting or being still in a meeting, pain in specific areas where an assault has occurred. I always try to give a heads up when it comes to assault, specifically sexual assault. Like if you are having a virtual meeting with a client, if you can just be mindful, any client, but being mindful of what's behind you. So making sure that maybe there's not a bed behind you or something that could be triggering to a client that they may not have been prepared for when they logged in. I've seen sometimes with Zoom court and order of protection hearings where the abuser has kind of strategically logged themselves in front of like an old photo of the two of them together, or like some garbage, for lack of a better word, behind them to try to maybe get the victim to change their mind on moving forward. It could be a physical or a psychological trauma, but it could still cause physical symptoms. So someone who may not have been physically abused but might have an emotional trauma can still very much so have physical symptoms of trauma that they're exerting. So any, oh wait, no, I got some more. Let's see. These are some more that you might see is nausea, headaches. You know, and when someone has a headache, it's hard for them to listen. It's hard for them to really talk. So you might be experiencing that. You're in the client meeting. You thought it was going to be an hour and a half. It's the only hour and a half you have for the next 2 weeks. And they can't communicate with you because they're just so overwhelmed by kind of the re-traumatization of the meeting. Disruption in eating or sleeping patterns, not being able to eat or sleep. You guys can read the other ones that are on there too. Nightmares, flashbacks, that can happen a lot of times too, like right before court, you might see that. Anything else that you can think of or that either you've seen or might, you don't have to share if you've personally experienced it, but that's not on this list, that could be a physical symptom of trauma? Yeah.
I had a client who had chest tightness and difficulty breathing.
What did you do in that situation?
just kind of slowed down and let her talk at her own pace.
Absolutely. Always, anytime you see chest tightness, just emphasize breathing. Oh, look, I'm seeing some stuff up here. Those chats. When we go into fight or flight mode, we tend to stop breathing, which then can make things worse. And so making sure that we stop, we take some deep inhales, some deep exhales, and just kind of try to fill the body up with oxygen. It can start to help us like moderate our, our heartbeats, and just making sure that we're able to start to focus in a little bit more at the task at hand and remember where we are, right? Sometimes we might, I don't know if it's on another slide, but sometimes what can happen is a client might disassociate, and so they might mentally become in a different place. And so making sure that we are taking those pauses and that we're trying to emphasize them breathing can kind of bring them back to where they are. You're in a safe place. We're in my office. I'm here. I'm your advocate, and we're going to do our best today. And if we don't get it done, that's going to be okay. So here are some, so these are physical symptoms. Then we have some behavioral, emotional symptoms of what can trauma look like. Hypervigilance, you know, like, is that cell phone recording me? Like, what's that? Like, is anybody else in this room? Can anyone else hear me? So a lot of self-blame sometimes, like I should have left for domestic violence. It was my fault. Like I shouldn't have had kids with this person, or I shouldn't have come to this country, or maybe I should have filed that tax deadline. Like it's a lot of self-blame. At the same time though, too, it could also be the opposite, which can be very challenging when you are the helping professional, where it then becomes externalized responsibility to others. So instead of self-blame, it's everybody else's fault. So like, let's say you're going into that OP hearing, unfortunately, you don't get the order, whatever it is. And then it's, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. And had you done this differently, this would have happened. And could you have done this? And sometimes that can be a form of projection. And so that's that self-blame that they're experiencing, but they're not really articulating it as self-blame. They're projecting it onto the professional. And that, again, the best thing, if you guys remember anything from this presentation, is try to just sharpen your skills at being able to identify when that happens so that you can really kind of separate yourself from it. This is not me. I did my best. I prepared the best case I could. All I could do was the best I could do. I couldn't do any more. And that's just where it has to end. Because then we're going to ruminate again and we're going to be like, we could have done this differently. We could have done this differently. And then maybe this client wouldn't have been in this situation. And that's when the kind of the vicarious trauma starts to overcome us. Is there a hand? No. Okay. Next slide. Just some more things of what trauma looks like. I think I mentioned that earlier. Grief, disassociating. So kind of starting to isolate yourself from friends, from others. Changes in sexual behavior can come out with victims of sexual assault, which can unfortunately create sometimes more issues, more problems, more instances of sexual assault that then they need legal help with. And then we run into sometimes judges not being very trained on these different types of trauma and starting to victim blame, and then kind of being in that quicksand again, right? Of I'm trying to advocate for my client, and now I'm put in this position where I need to educate the judge, and then I've got this opposing counsel who's over here meowing. So again, just trying to take everything like one step at a time. Substance abuse gets really common, and also just challenging to be able to focus on, okay, I'm a lawyer, I'm task oriented. I know I got to do ba ba ba. And now I have this client who's coming in and is not very reliable for whatever reasons. And so how am I going to kind of try to pivot and adapt so that I can make sure I'm doing the best job and the best service to the client, and also taking care of myself. So let's see. So there's kind of two different forms of trauma a little bit. Sometimes we have what's called express trauma, then controlled trauma. Express trauma can be a little bit harder to deal with when you're experiencing it with your clients. They do these outward manifestations. I can't tell you how many times I did a lot of supervising of young attorneys. And so we would be walking out of that courtroom, order of protection wasn't granted, client just starts screaming and swearing, and now this young attorney is in tears. And so try to have a plan to avoid that, right? So I will always try to, when I'm talking to my client, and it's either we're going into this hearing or we're filing this petition and we're going to wait for the response or whatever the action is, it could go this way or it could go that way. If it goes this way, this is the plan. If it goes that way, this is the plan. So try to rein it in as much as you can of, if we don't get the order of protection, we're going to talk about ways that we can still meet your goals of feeling safe, and what possible next steps are, so that hopefully we could try to eliminate some of these expressed traumas that can come out. This part can get really challenging too. You might have someone who wants to tell their story over and over and over again, but you've got a caseload of 20, 30 clients, and you only have so much time to hear their story over and over and over again. So, you know, when I was at Lifespan, it was nice because we kind of paired up with counselors. So it was kind of like, I'm here for more of like the legal parts of your story. This counselor is here for more of the emotional parts, and we work together. So they have more time to be able to have longer conversations with you so you feel heard, and then I can focus on what I need to do to prepare for court. So if you are ever able to snag a therapist or a mental health professional who you can consult with, that always can make your job a little bit easier too, because that person doesn't sit in court for 5 hours waiting for their case to be called. So they might have a little bit more time to deal with, to hear the client's story and be able to kind of clean it up a little bit for you, and then help you get the answers that you need for what you need to do. So, that. Stop me if you have any questions, comments about that. Controlled trauma. So this is when it's not as easy to see, but it still can be, it can still be very impactful for the client, and it can cause hurdles for what you're trying to do in your work. So this might be your client who's just kind of sitting there, maintaining the composure, giving you yes, no answers. You might be like, wow, this client's great. But internally they might be going through so much more than we even realize. So, or maybe they're avoiding talking about something, or they're just kind of talking about it as if they're not even there. And for this, I would say too, a lot of times, unfortunately, when we meet with clients, we're not the first person that they've had to kind of tell their story to. And so a survival tool sometimes for victims of trauma can be to kind of numb themselves and release themselves from the emotion of it. And so by the time they talk to you, whether you're the 5th, 6th, 8th person, who knows, they might just be giving you these straightforward answers. And you're like, well, you know, I need to expand a little bit on this piece of it. And they just can't. This can come out when it kind of determines what kind of witness are they going to be if we're going to trial. And so, you know, my experiences with domestic violence was sometimes I've had to kind of sit with clients and just kind of explain, you have told your story to me a million times, and you've told it to so many people a million times, but the judge, it's the first time that they're hearing it. And so trying to help them like understand, I know that we're tired of having to say this story, especially when abuser is probably going to be right there listening, and it's incredibly challenging, but this is the time where we might have to be able to share a little bit more detail. And this is why. So explaining like, why is there that expectation there too, can be helpful with being able to kind of work with some of these obstacles with clients with trauma, but then help you feel like you're doing a little bit more successfully in your role as the attorney. Doing a lot of talking. Okay, so that was kind of the breakdown on trauma. So then let's talk about a little bit like vicarious trauma, which is why I'm here, right? So what is it? What is vicarious trauma? What do we think? Kind of talked about it a little bit, but yeah.
I guess when you like feel trauma, not as a result of your own experiences, but as a result of those who you interact.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything anybody wants to add to that? It's a great answer. So yeah, it's cumulative effect of working with trauma. It can affect many aspects of a person's life long after the work has finished. So this is important to keep in mind. I actually had a younger attorney call me earlier this week and kind of said, I feel like I'm going through acute vicarious trauma. And so we kind of talked about it a little bit more. And I think this person didn't realize how, okay, I think that it's just something that stresses me out when I'm at work, but actually it does kind of slither into other areas of our personal life. And so that's what we want to avoid. Because as I said earlier, right, like this is about also making sure we can have the best quality of lives for ourselves. And we're so much more at the end of the day than lawyers or social workers or whatever profession that we decide to be. And so these are some other kind of terms that can be used for vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, compassion fatigue, work-related trauma exposure. So if you hear those, that's very similar to vicarious trauma. These are usually some of the symptoms of vicarious trauma. So we've got some wonderful things up here, huh? Anxiety, self-doubt, withdrawn, feeling overwhelmed. I feel like I heard a lot of these things even when we were just going around the room. So we're already kind of coming in with some of these things. Appetite changes, loss of purpose. This one makes me so sad. Sleeping disturbance, inability to concentrate, anger, poor self-care, minimization, substance abuse. If you feel like you're ever experiencing one of these things, that's when I would emphasize, like, let's stop and let's do some reflection. And so substance abuse can also, drugs and alcohol. Anything else that's not on this list that you feel could be related to feelings of vicarious trauma?
I think overworking can also be as a result.
That sometimes I feel like is a result of loss of purpose. I think a lot of people feel like they lose their outside identity and they come just so consumed with work. And then they just get deeper and deeper into the fog. Yeah.
I'm inclined to say like most of the symptoms you described of like I don't know if primary trauma is the term or not, but of like both behavioral and emotional as well as physical symptoms can at times like occur.
Absolutely. Anything else? Okay. So I have an activity. This is going to be a gift to you. So if you guys can all take and sorry for the online people, you're going to miss out on this part. A note card and just here, I'll just do that for everyone. Hope I haven't. If I don't, we might have to just maybe cut a piece of paper.
We have extras too.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, wait.
No?
I need to use that.
I think we did, yeah. Sorry.
Who's missing one? Oh, we got it.
Well, enough for online people, but.
Yeah, the online, I'm sorry. I'll think of a way to get this, but we'll figure it out. Okay. Okay. Oh, sure. Okay. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna write on these note cards. We're gonna collect them all. We're gonna shuffle them all up, and then everyone's gonna leave with somebody else's note card, right? And this is gonna be kind of just a way for you to have more tools in your tool belt to deal with vicarious trauma, because you're gonna have someone else's tools, and then someone else is gonna get yours. Does that make sense? So on this like blank side right here, you can write, dear friend, dear future lawyer, dear whatever. What would you like to receive? When you're receiving this card, what would you want it to say? Does that make sense? Dear awesome person. And then on the side with the lines, we're gonna, okay. Okay, so we're gonna put, we're gonna finish this sentence. And I guess everybody online, you can just kind of answer it and then maybe look at what other people are putting online and kind of create your own note card that way. So always remember to finish that sentence. Or we're trying to be positive here. We're trying to like overcome vicarious trauma. Let's see what else we can do here. It helps me to finish that.
Both of these?
Yeah.
Yes. First part of stuff.
Can you see this? It says the first one, the first part's always remember to, and then finish it how you would like it finished for you. And then the second one is it helps me to, and I mean, go on a bike ride, take a walk, go for a jog, call for a friend, all the things. And then for the last one, if you have space, if you don't, that's fine. Throw a favorite quote. Or make up one of your own that you hope to become a favorite quote one day. You're done. You can go ahead and start passing them maybe to the middle, and then we'll pass them up forward. Take your time. I'm gonna give you guys a couple minutes and grab more water if that's okay.
This is gonna just be specific.
It looks like some people might be writing some stuff online. Can we hear some of the stuff they're saying?
Yes.
Always
remember to take time for a cup of tea. It helps
on.
tea. Always remember to take mental health days if you need to. It helps me to spend time with my family. Always remember to leave work at work as much as you can. It helps me to listen to my favorite music. Slow down when you can and appreciate the little things in life. Spend time in nature. It helps me to breathe slowly and think slowly. Take a break. It helps me to do yoga. It helps me to exercise, especially soccer. And always remember to find something to be grateful for every day. It helps me to listen to music. And then for number 3, smooth seas don't make good sailors.
That's fair.
Yeah, you're also not drowned.
I'll give you guys a couple more minutes. We only got a couple more slides. Get through. And then, yeah, when you're done, just go ahead and pass them all the way to the centers and then pass them up, and I'll just collect them at the front. Thank you for indulging me on these activities.
have.
I have an extra favorite quote.
Oh, awesome. Did I get everybody's? Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm just gonna keep shuffling. Okay, so back to this. So what, vicarious trauma. So we're gonna leave with a set of tools. But how else can we manage or avoid vicarious trauma? I have got some ideas on here. Knowing boundaries, enforcing them. I feel like this was brought up when it comes to maybe overworking. So knowing that at some point the workday needs to stop. And this was something that I feel like I talked about with the person I mentioned earlier this week. They had talked about like they leave work at 4, they go to their like soccer team, whatever, practice, and then they go back on their computer and they do some more work, and then they go to bed. And it's like, okay, well, if you're doing work right before you go to bed, what do you think you're probably dreaming or thinking about? Or what kind of quality of sleep do you think you're really getting when you do that? So that is just an example sometimes of how it can kind of spread into other areas of your personal life. And so set the boundaries that you need to. For me, I was the type of person where I got up, I was in the office by 7 a.m. because I knew like I want to be done by 5 and that's it. Then I can have the second half of the day to focus on personal life and not have to worry about checking up on things right when I go back right before I go to bed. Easier said than done, and sometimes a little bit challenging depending on the type of lawyering that you're doing, but at the end of the day, if you're not helping yourself, how much are you really helping anybody else? Got to put that oxygen mask on first. So being mindful of when you're pushing your limits, communicating boundaries to friends and loved ones. I think we'll talk about this the next slide too with coworkers, self-care. Can you see that last one? How do you take care of yourself? How do you take care of yourself continuously and sustainably? What do you think? We're talking about ways we can take care of ourselves, maybe some short-term things that we do, but how do we make that sustain? So let's say you're gonna leave today, you're gonna have this note card, you've got some things, some exercises we practice, but how do we make that sustain past the bar, past law school, or past getting sworn in?
I give myself emotional homework. So like, if I got too angry at a situation, I go home and I'm like, okay, well, being angry is rational. Being angry is a natural reaction. But like, I yelled and I took it out on people who weren't involved. So like, why did I do that? How could I have done that differently? Like, process why I was angry and what can I do about it instead of taking it on others.
Absolutely. And anger is a secondary emotion, right? So if you think of like the iceberg image, anger is kind of what happens above, but there's probably another emotion underneath. If you can get to the root of what that emotion is, that's how you can get some long-term sustainable change. So thank you for that. Very helpful. I just want to make sure I end on time. So this is, I think the last slide that I had. Healthy boundaries with coworkers. I can't stress this one enough. You know, I came from Lifespan, where Lifespan is like my family. We call each other Lambda Sig. Boundaries were like a little bit, I don't know. You have to set boundaries though, or at least when you are hanging out with your coworkers, you have to set limits of, this is when we have to stop talking about work. Otherwise, if it's all we talk about all day, every day, we're gonna just, work is going to be our identity. There's not going to be other things about us, and it can then impact maybe intimate relationships with other people. It can impact friendships with other people outside of work, and you don't want that to happen. So making sure that you're having healthy boundaries with your coworkers, that you're leaving work at work. You know, for a long time, it's like, hey, we're going to hang out. We're not working, but like, let's not hang out in the office. Like, let's go somewhere. It's like a different change of scenery and seeing other people who are not kind of in the day-to-day grind that we are. Talking about work with others, sometimes when you're talking about all the topics that you guys went around and said, people outside of this bubble don't really want to hear about those things all the time. And so that's okay. But then maybe finding other things about your life that you would want to talk about with others. So you can still feel like you're very part of the conversation, or having a way to talk about work where it may feel like it's got a kind of a positive or a hopeful twist to it, right? Like I work with clients and they're going through immigration issues, but we do these remedies for them, and there's these laws and these kind of policies in place to try to help make things more efficient in the system, which that can be, again, easier said than done, but just trying to stay positive. So that's all I had. I did have another activity, but we don't have time for it. So now I know that for next year, maybe not talk as much in that one point, but that's all I have. Any questions, comments, concerns? I want to make sure everyone walks out with one of these. So I don't know what the best way to do that is. Maybe just passing them all again. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just to make sure everyone wrote one, so everyone should be able to have one. Just keep it somewhere safe. That's all I got, unless there's any questions or comments, concerns. Good luck to everybody on the bar and in your placements. You're gonna do wonderful things.
No, I was like, you didn't take the top one. Where's this guy?
Probably have 5 minutes for questions.
You want to-
Schedule something fun for after the bar. I'm a little bit traumatic. I went straight to the airport and flew to Italy. To try to do something to that equivalent, because that helped me like the night before the exam, where it was just like, whatever, pass or not pass, I'm out of here. So try to schedule something fun if you can. Anyway.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So now we're all gonna go up to the 7th floor for lunch. There's different boxes for sandwiches, and there's gluten-free and veggie options. So grab a box and then sit at your table. If you don't know what table, come talk to me. If there's any problems with like where people are sitting, or like if there's not a seat, come talk to me. And then we'll be back here at around 2:15 to start our conflict management session with Ray Christie. So during lunch, talk with your alumni, talk with each other, and see you back at 2:15.
I'm gonna try to see you at Race to Chicago this year.